guys, welcome to Movies I Watched This Week. I'm in my pajamas. This is my hair from like 2 days ago, but let's just get right into it. There's 5 movies to rush through. I did something totally different this time. Took notes all in one document, so we kind of have everything here ready to start. Before we get into anything, I have housekeeping, and that housekeeping is really important and really exciting stuff. So number 1, from the last time that we've talked, great things are happening for me, for my ego, whatever. Benito Skinner reposted my TikTok. Yeah, give it a clap, give it a clap. And then Owen Thiel put me on his story the other day because I was talking about you evil people that spoiled adults for me, okay? Now, let me preface by saying, I love edits. Before I go to bed every night, I watch a slew of them. It's my favorite thing. I think there should be a Golden Globes level category of awards for TikTok editors. Similarly to back in the day on Vine, like the Harry Styles edits, you guys were really killing the game. However, so not that this problem only revolves around me, but I'm gonna make it about me while we're here on my channel. I work all weekend, so I can't really sit down and binge watch 8 episodes of FX new show Adults on Hulu until like a Sunday, Monday. So when it was the day after the show came out and I'd already seen the last episode on TikTok spoiled, I was kind of pissed. Yeah, so I binge watched that all last night into this morning. It's amazing. It's incredible. I would have liked the ending to have been a surprise. Thank you. It wasn't. I'm watching Overcompensating right now, catching up on what I've missed. That being said, if anybody's watching this and you need an annoying loud extra for season 2, Overcompensating or Adults, I'm available. I'll quit my job. Okay, grab a drink, get comfortable, fold the laundry that you've been meaning to for days, wash your ass, wash the toilet, I don't care. And let's get into the video. Chin chin! Okay, first movie we saw in theaters, what a treat that was. Final Destination Bloodlines, directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein. I rated it 4.5 stars, okay? Previously, in the last couple videos, I rated, reviewed, talked about all of the Final Destination movies as I was building up to watch this one in theaters. I didn't grow up watching Final Destination, which I'm so bummed about. Like, I grew up watching Scream. And with the new installment of the Scream franchise, the movie that came out, I don't even know the year. Melissa Barrera, Jenna Ortega, Mikey Madison, Jack Quaid. I loved that movie. I thought it was great. I think what they did in terms of making Melissa Barrera's character Billy's daughter, I wasn't really a fan of because I feel like it kind of cut off possibility for adapting future Scream productions, but after them firing Melissa Barrera, I don't give 2 shits about really the new installments of the Scream franchise. I'm totally fine not watching anymore. That being said, I was nervous about what they were going to do with Final Destination Bloodlines because I feel like the trailer didn't give a lot away, which thank you so much. Trailers are way too long and they give you the whole movie on a platter and then it's like there's no shock, surprise, or delight, okay? I was very nervous, but I was also very excited because at the end of the day, the Final Destination movies really do something for horror, which is they make every living situation terrifying and they give me so much anxiety, which I love. But also, they're just satirical, they're funny, they're gory, there's a lot of shock value involved. Okay, so let's get into the plot here. I'm going to read you the synopsis, we'll get into the plot. Because at first, watching the movie when I was sitting there and they had the opening sequence like they do in all the movies where then somebody sees the future and they're like, we're all gonna die, we gotta get out of here. They escape death and then death comes for them. This was really different. And sitting in the theater at first, I was like, I don't like this. And then I kept watching the movie and I was like, wait, this is fucking genius. And that's why sometimes you have to take time to reflect before you let your opinions get in the way. And that's your advice from DGM today. Death runs in the family. What a great line. What a great log line to begin with. Okay. Plagued by a violent reoccurring nightmare, college student Stephanie heads back home to track down the one person who might be able to break the cycle and save her family from the grisly demise that inevitably awaits them all. Spoiler alert. I think it's been enough time that I'm going to break the movie down for you if you haven't seen it yet or if you have seen it so that we can have a educated conversation. Okay. So we start off And it's the 1950s, I want to say, based on, I don't know, the wardrobe. I'm just going to take a gander here. And this guy, whose name I can't remember, and Iris are going up to this new restaurant called the Skyview, which reminded me a lot of this restaurant that's in Clifton Hill near Niagara Falls, that you go up this giant-ass elevator to the top of a spinning building where you sit and eat dinner and hope you don't fall to your death. So the two of them go up to this tower. It's this huge opening for this new skyscraper restaurant thing, and everybody's dancing and they play Shout, which is like, you know, notoriously a song for the Buffalo Bills, which now is just terrifying because I heard it yesterday at the Pride Parade and literally thought I was about to die. Everybody's dancing, having a good time, and then she eventually goes out onto the balcony and her boyfriend gets on one knee and is going to propose to her. There's this little shit kid that is in the entire movie who kind of is the root of all evil: children, boys, death. I mean, I think that metaphor serves itself. But he's such a little shit stirrer. He's like taking pennies out of the fountain. He runs onto the elevator when there's not room for him. We get up to the top and he's chucking pennies off the skyscraper. And the security guard is like, don't do that. You can literally kill somebody. Which at book club last week I learned is a true fact. If you throw a penny off a building, the force of gravity or something, if the penny hits someone in the head, it can kill them. So don't fucking throw your pennies, okay? Throw them wisely. And be careful what you wish for. He chucks one off. Then the whole, you know, death plot unfolds where she's running around on the, I mean, everything that you could imagine goes wrong. The glass breaks and people fall through the floor. The elevator breaks. The whole building basically just like catches on fire and everybody dies. Okay? Except Iris and someone who we find out later in the film. So then she's at the skyscraper. He gets on one knee. She comes to and she's like, oh my God, we're all about to die. Like the vision comes true. And with time spared, she gets out and she saves this little boy. Then what usually happens when the person wakes up and they get out is that we follow them from then on, avoiding death. And then in the end, they either die or survive. Whatever. This picks up with Stephanie. So I was like, who the hell is Stephanie and where did Iris go? I thought we were going back to the 50s. What's happening here? And Stephanie is kind of the key that holds the story together because we find out, I'm going to speed run through this, okay? We find out that she's the granddaughter of Iris and she's having all these visions because her family was never supposed to exist because Iris was supposed to die. So this kind of sets up the plot for the next installment, however many, of Final Destination Bloodlines. Because while we're following Stephanie and her, like, trying to get her family to tell her who Iris is and find out more information about that, you're also figuring out that Iris, her grandmother, was in the tower, was never supposed to die, or was supposed to die. And so we have these two plots that finally meet in the center when Stephanie and Iris meet, and they kind of give us that, like, cheesy action sequence where they explain the entire plot for you if you hadn't caught on by then, which always happens in crime and like mystery stories where you get to the end and they're like, I've been plotting this for years. And it's like, well, we would have never picked up on that. Hello? I hate when they do that in books also. But this was okay. So Iris is explaining to Stephanie what happened the day at the Skyview, how she saved this little boy. And Stephanie's like, so we're all going to die and it's going to go in this order. And then that's how we pick up with, if you've seen any of the teaser trailers of In the Tattoo Shop, in the Backyard Barbecue with the Lawnmower, that's where we get into the true Final Destination, I guess, movie. But all of this setup, at first I was annoyed by it, but now I'm like, this really sets up any fucking thing you want. Because the whole point is that everybody that was on the Skyview that day got off because she got everybody off in time. She saved everybody's life. The little boy that she saved we find out later in the film, is Tony Todd, who the film is dedicated for, which I thought was really beautiful. He's the little boy that saved, so that's where we have this thread that goes through all the Final Destination movies of him, because he was saved, he escaped death, and he warns and tells everybody, you're not safe. And I thought it was a really beautiful moment where he was like, well, death's already coming for me, and he has unfortunately passed, so the film was dedicated to him. But it was just a really great way to round it out, and you find out that Iris is diagnosed with cancer, and she's like, so death is coming for me anyway. So she's lived this whole life avoiding death, feeling when it's coming, knowing, and she has this entire book of all the deaths that have happened in the Final Destination series, which I think was a great way to bring it back and talk about them while like paying homage to those stories, but also leaving room for new ones. So then Iris ends up dying so she can prove that death is following them and they all have a target on their back. And then we pick up and follow Stephanie and her family as they all escape death. And these death sequences are fucking disgusting, okay? There's the lawnmower one. I thought that was pretty tame. Sinister really scared the shit out of me. So, like, the lawnmower was gross, but it was okay. Then there's a whole scene with the MRI and a vending machine. That one made my skin crawl. I was almost puking in the theater. Like, I don't get that queasy, but as of late, for some reason, 2 movies in the theater that have made me want to throw up were Novocaine and Final Destination Bloodlines. So then one of the girls dies because she gets, like, hit in the head with a soccer ball, and she's so tiny, she gets thrown into a garbage bin, and then the garbage truck comes, picks her up, and she gets squished. And oh, there's so many things. Eventually we get to the end, and Stephanie and her brother are, like, we are the last 2. Like, one of us has to either die and come back to life or kill somebody else and step in their place. So there's kind of a very similar scene to the second movie where she's in an RV and she falls in the water at Iris's, like, booby-trapped house, and she drowns and her brother saves her. So then they're at prom or something, and Stephanie and her brother are like, we escaped death, like, we brought her back to life and saved her, it was a miracle. And one of the dads is just kind of like, well, I mean, she wasn't dead, like, her heart didn't stop, she was just drowning and choking on water, so she didn't actually die. While this is happening, a theme that comes throughout the whole film, or maybe a motif, I don't really know, is a penny dropping, and that kind of being the signal of, like, somebody's about to die, because of the pennies being chucked off in the beginning of the movie off the sky view. So you see this woman trying to get a penny out, and it falls all the way down to the train tracks and gets stuck in the train tracks, of course. And so when they're having this realization of, wait, we didn't escape death, a train derails and kills them, and then the movie ends. So that was a rapid fire synopsis of the film, but I really think they did a great job of allowing it, because now we all have that anchor to the sky view. Anybody's relation could have been there that day. So it kind of gives you this super creative and random plot point to have infinite Final Destination movies. And at first, yeah, I was kind of like, who's Stephanie? I don't care. Because I think it's kind of hard, especially with the conditioning we have of modern storytelling, where most movies start off with somebody losing a job or getting broken up with, and we feel pity for that character, and then it makes it easier to gain their trust and care about them throughout the story arc. So having the start of the story be Iris, I keep wanting to say Issa because I just binged watched Adults. Having the beginning of the story follow Iris and then picking up a Stephanie, you're almost like, who are you? I don't care. But then we get that tie to Iris and Okay, hold on a second, because the siblings were so freaking funny. Richard Harmon is Eric. Hilarious. He was the funniest bit of the movie. His death was the most disgusting. And when he dies in the MRI machine, I don't want to spoil it. I mean, he dies in the MRI machine, but I feel like that's something you have to see for yourself, because I was heaved over in the movie theater. Like, I'm never getting an MRI. Oh, and Patrick Joyner, doesn't he have a hazelnut allergy? I feel like I remember that from watching TikToks, and also I was obsessed with Julie and the Phantom, so seeing him on my screen was really enjoyable. So, my review was, obviously death is a he. They kept referring it to death as a he, which makes sense. Something that evil and cruel could only be done by a man. My stomach fell to my ass several times watching this, and now I will never ever get an MRI. So, those are my thoughts and feelings on Final Destination Bloodlines. I loved it. And I'm really excited to see what they do with it now. It was just like what you want when you go see a Final Destination or a Scream or a scary movie, where you're going to get laughs, you're going to get scared, grossed out. It's all of everything. And I thought it was fucking brilliant. So those are my thoughts on Final Destination Bloodlines. And let's get right on into the next movie I watched, which was A Different Man. Directed by Aaron Schimberg. I rated this 4 stars, and I'm so mad at myself that I didn't watch it sooner. Okay, I've been meaning to watch A Different Man since it was nominated for an Oscar, because every year I try to watch all of the movies nominated, but there's this unfortunate thing with distribution where, you know, you have to pay for movies that to watch on a streaming platform you already pay for, or they're not available, they didn't get, I don't know, distributed to movie theaters in your area. That kind of happened to me with all the movies nominated. So A Different Man was in theaters, I want to say for like 2 weeks in the fall or winter. So I didn't have time to go see that. When all these movies were coming out, I went to Europe. Oh, boo-hoo. And I did end up going to the movie theater while I was in Europe. This was right after the election. And that's when I saw The Apprentice and, like, had a breakdown. Anyway, that movie's phenomenal. Please watch it. Sing Sing, which is also a movie that I watched that we'll talk about. All these movies were coming out. None of these movies were coming to theaters near me. And not that this is a pity party for Paige, but can we get some movies to come to theaters for longer than days? Weeks? What just came out? On Swift Horses came out, and it was at the Flicks near my house for 2 days. I want to go to the movies and see a movie with my ass in a chair with popcorn and a Coke that I brought from home. Okay? I don't want to watch them at home. It doesn't give the same feeling. After watching Sing Sing specifically and sobbing hysterically in my bathroom, because I watched it partly in my bathroom, which we'll get to, I was sobbing, and I wish I got to feel that in a theater with other people around. Movies are meant to be shared. They're meant to be like a communal experience of everybody in the theater gasping and laughing and crying at different times. Not on your phones, not crunkling your wrappers. But it's just such a bummer to me that so many great movies came out in the past year and there's just such limited distribution. Or no distribution at all, no other lands. I still haven't been able to see that because I don't know where it is. But the biggest thing that pisses me off is when I'm told that a movie is on a streaming platform and then I go on that streaming platform and then you have to pay for it. Prime, Apple TV, what the hell? Okay. A Different Man, directed by Aaron Schimberg. I rated it 4 stars. It's fucking incredible. The more you change, the more you stay the same. Aspiring actor Edward undergoes a radical medical procedure to drastically transform his appearance, but his new dream face quite quickly turns into a nightmare as he loses out on the role he was born to play and becomes obsessed with reclaiming what he lost. So the film follows Sebastian Stan. His character Edward has a facial deformity. And where we pick up, we find out that he's an actor and he just shot some video or role. And then later in the film, you find out that it was a commercial for how to treat coworkers with facial deformities. So you realize, yes, he's an actor, aspiring actor. He is very talented, but because of his facial deformity, he's not given opportunities because people assume that he can only play one role, which is a deformed character. So we follow him on this journey as he finds a doctor and they're like, we can completely change your face, which is pretty much everything you want and more. And he's like, yep, sign me up. There, of course, are side effects and whatever. But while this is happening, so we have Edward, lives in this apartment, has a facial deformity, is going to get surgery to drastically transform his face. A woman moves into the apartment next to him, Ingrid. And Ingrid is fabulous and fun at first. She's really nice. She comes over. She is a friend to him without really making it known that she's staring at his facial deformity or like has a lot of questions about it. She's just kind of very friendly to him, which is nice because he's not used to that, obviously. And so while this is all going on, you find out she's a playwright. He's an aspiring actor and writer. He gifts her this typewriter. And they bond very closely with one another. You can tell that there's a crush happening on his end, but she doesn't have the same feelings because of his facial deformity. And so what we see throughout the film is that in the beginning when he still has the deformity, he's more sure of himself, even though he's very insecure about his appearance and people making comments and staring at him and all these things. But he is himself. And so then, in a very theatrical way, the film is shot so beautifully. It's very whimsical. It's quirky. It was so different than what I'm used to seeing in films nominated for Oscars. I loved how theatrical the whole thing was. There's just so many like long takes or quick cuts and things. I just really loved the use of red in the film as well. Overall, visually stunning and stimulating. I thought it was really great. So then he undergoes this surgery where they dramatically changed his face and he's now looks like Sebastian Stan. So then he undergoes this surgery where they dramatically changed his face and he's now looks like Sebastian Stan. When that happens, yeah, Sebastian Stan is an attractive man. But the whole point of it is that he lost what made him himself. Because now he goes out for this audition. I'm assuming it's been like a year or a couple years because he changes his name from Edward to Guy, right? Am I right about that? And he just takes on this new identity of a new man. Instead of being like, yeah, I had a facial transformation surgery, he just kind of picks up and is like, yeah, this is me now. And so then we find Ingrid. She now has a bob. She's a writer. She wrote that play. And what is the play? Edward's life story. It's literally about her becoming friends with this man, Edward, with the facial deformity, and then her boyfriend, who we see a couple times in the beginning of the film, being like, why are you friends with this dude? And while this is happening, he's auditioning for this role, and he's like, I know Edward, like, I feel it. And obviously he auditions and he gets the part because he is Edward. She doesn't know that, but he has that tie to the character. And then he brings out the mask. So there's a mask made. Sorry, my stool is broken. There's a mask made after he has his facial surgery of what his face looked like before. And he keeps it. I don't know why. And so he gets the part in this play, playing a deformed man, even though he doesn't have a deformity anymore. And that's when Adam Pearson comes in, who plays Oswald, who is just the shining light of the film. I was expecting him to be in it way more from the press and like what I'd seen of the movie leading up to finally watching it. But his role was just so perfect, and he came in so late, and he comes in when they're rehearsing this play, and he sees Sebastian Stan wearing the mask that looks identical to Adam Pearson. And Oswald is kind of like, oh, I heard that you guys were having an audition for a character with a deformity. My agent told me, but it seems like you have the role filled ably, which I loved that line because they do that in film all the time. Instead of hiring, someone with a disability, they'll put an able-bodied person in a wheelchair. Instead of hiring a queer person, they'll hire two straight dudes to portray queer characters. They do this all the time. So I really loved that line. It stuck out to me. And then what happens is Sebastian Stan and Ingrid form this budding relationship together where, they become romantic, sexual, etc., which is so funny because it's the same guy, he just looks different, which is a huge piece of the movie, obviously. But at the same time, she's falling in love with Oswald because he perfectly fits Edward. He looks like Edward. He's the character that she wants. She just, for some reason, won't give him the role because he's actually deformed. She was fucked up and weird for writing that play in the first place. But we watch as Sebastian Stan slowly goes insane because he lost such a huge part of himself when he decided to change his face, which is why the log line of the more you change, the more you stay the same is so great, because he completely changes. Physically, mentally, emotionally, he completely evolves into this new character, and at the same time, all those insecurities he had before of nobody likes me for who I am because I look this way, those insecurities still exist, which is the main point of the film from what I got, with this incredible theatrical cinematography and these wonderfully theatrical performances. If this was a play, if A Different Man was a play, I would go see it because it just felt different and I loved it so much. And such an interesting theme that we see so much, especially now in the world of social media and plastic surgery and having the ability to change your appearance at the drop of a hat with filters or makeup or hair, plastic surgery, whatever. You realize that even if you change every physical attribute of yourself, unless you do the work to change yourself internally, you will always stay the same. You might be hotter, you might be thinner, you might have no fat on your body, but that person you are inside still shines through. And we see that with Sebastian Stan as Edward guy, the new guy, because he's still deeply insecure about who he is as a person, because when he had this facial deformity, he felt as if he couldn't live freely because of the facial deformity. He was never able to fall in love with who he is as a person and feel secure in his body. So when they literally took his face off and gave him a new one, all of the stuff happening in here, not liking yourself, all those anxieties and insecurities, they don't go away when you change something physically about yourself. And Adam Pearson comes in as Oswald and shows him that, because he too has a facial deformity, but he's so sure in himself. He can talk to other people, he flirts with other people, he's singing, he's dancing, he's telling jokes, and it's because he never let that one physical attribute define him. Even though on the surface, if you were looking at a person, and I really would love to see Adam Pearson in more things now, because he was just so good. Sebastian Stan, I think, is one of the greatest actors of our time. Selfishly, I'm biased. I'm in love with him. I fell in love with him in middle school. Like, what do you want? He looked like Carter Basin at one point in the movie, and I almost shit myself. Anyway, I thought Ingrid's character was so interesting because, you're willing to become friends with certain people or use them as a muse, but she also had her own insecurities and things as a writer, and I just thought the whole, you're going to write a play about your old neighbor with the facial deformity who you were friends with and exploit that for your play off Broadway in New York? That's crazy. So let me read you my review, and I really think you should watch it. I wrote, thrilled, delighted to watch Sebastian... Thrilled, delighted to watch Sebastian Stan descend into madness at the hands of his own self-hatred. Absolutely... I got a like on my Letterboxd review. Oh my god, this never happens. Whoa. Holy crap. Absolutely brilliant, and now I'm even more peeved about his snubs this award season. Adam Pearson, too. Because when he comes in like the end of the second act into the third act, there's just a tonal shift in the movie and a brightness that he brings in his performance. So the fact that he wasn't nominated or spoken about as highly as Sebastian Stan was for this movie, crazy. Can't believe I got a like on my Letterboxd review. Okay, so that's it for A Different Man. Now let's get into Sense and Sensibility. Let me keep it real with you. Sense and Sensibility, I rated it 3.5 stars. It's directed by Ang Lee, who I love deeply. I love Ang Lee, and you want to know why? Because he directed one of the greatest movies of all time, which happens to be Brokeback Mountain, which happens to be one of my favorite movies of all time, one of my favorite queer movies of all time. I also got the privilege to see it on the West End with Mike Feist and Lucas Hedges back in 2023, and it was probably the greatest play that I've ever seen in my whole life. So quickly, I just want to give my flowers to Ang Lee, because I absolutely love him. But let's get into Sense and Sensibility, because if I may speak freely with you, I watched this passively while I was doing other things, and I think that's totally okay with this movie. If you've seen Pride and Prejudice, if you've seen Little Women, if you've seen Anna Karenina, if you've seen Bridgerton, if you've seen any Victorian piece, I'm assuming those are all Victorian, I'm not fact-checking. If you've seen any Victorian piece about a group of young women at the time in their life where they're supposed to find their husband and be married off, you don't really need the entire plot or details to watch this movie. That's just, I mean, it's, let's read the synopsis, let's read the plot, and then you'll understand why. And then we'll get into my thoughts and opinions. Lose your heart and come to your senses. What a great one. The Dashwood sisters, sensible Eleanor and passionate Marianne, whose chances at marriage seem doomed by their family's sudden loss of fortune. When Henry Dashwood dies unexpectedly, his estate must pass on by law to his son from his first marriage, John and wife Fanny. But these circumstances leave Mr. Dashwood's current wife and daughters Eleanor, Marianne, and Margaret without a home, and with barely enough money to live on, as Eleanor and Marianne struggle to find romantic fulfillment in a society obsessed with financial and social status. They must learn to mix sense with sensibility in dealing with both money and men. I liked it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was romantic. I'm a big fan of romance, especially when the stakes are so high that you might lose your family's fortune or, be a spinster at the age of 30. I thought it was great. I didn't fully pay attention, so I can't sit here and give you notes on the mise en scène. But what I think Ang Lee does so well in Brokeback Mountain that I'm comparing to this film is his ability to evoke movement in stillness, where there's a lot of scenes where people are sitting and talking. There's a lot of scenes where they're outside and there's barely a gust of wind. And yet, through his direction and ability to draw out these raw emotions in the name of love, there's a movement in stillness. He creates a wake in calmness through emotional turmoil. So let me read you my review. How the fuck am I supposed to live and love in this sick world? I should be sitting in a chair with a corset sewn too tight, weeping as a man declares his love for me, who resembles Hugh Grant. I deserve it. 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 One of my favorite romances of all time is Notting Hill. Who's in that? Hugh Grant. I also love Four Weddings and a Funeral. Who's in that? Hugh Grant. I also love Maurice. Who's in that? Hugh Grant! So when, at the end of the film, we get to the piece where... When we get to the end where Emma Thompson and Hugh Grant are sitting in that room and he declares his love for her and she starts crying, I was like, this is exactly how I feel. Because you find out that he has a brother and he's not married, which is a huge thing because she's in love with him. And she's like, the guy I want's married. Been there. The guy I want taken. Doesn't want me. We've all been there. Sense and sensibility will tell you to not put all your eggs into the basket that has been claimed. Yeah, we all want what we can't have. and is in that life. Love Actually, we have Alan Rickman, Hugh Grant, Kate Winslet, Gemma Jones, Emma Thompson. I love them all together. They're all like such incredible actors, and so to see them all together playing off one another in this period piece is phenomenal. 1995. It just, the lighting in it I thought was so stunning because, taste speaking, I'm not a fan of natural lighting. I like, if you look at like the first Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, the lighting in that is so dramatic and stark. I love shadows. I love depth. I love creating emotion with lights that isn't realistic. Like, I'm not a big fan of, there's a window over there, so she's going to be lit from the window. I like when it's a little bit more theatrical. And so this being 1995, very theatrical, very fun. Where Bridgerton has a lot of natural lighting, which I think Netflix does a lot. And just taste-wise, I don't love it. So I just really like the movie. I rated it 3.5 stars. I wish I could give you a full disclosure, like, thoughts and prayers on the movie, but I don't have them. So let's move on. Okay, now we're going to get into Sing Sing, which is the most important film we're going to be talking about today. Everybody get on the same page. Sing Sing is available on Max as well. Okay. I rated it 5 stars, and it's directed by Greg Kidar. Kidar. Please let me know if I said that wrong, because I'm sure I did. I'm going to read the synopsis and we're going to get into my notes because I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this movie. My main thought being, why didn't this win Best Picture? I saw Anora too. I really liked it too. But you're going to put Anora and Sing Sing next to each other. The logline is trust the process. And I think that this statement is like the whole overarching theme of the film in a way, because not only is it like trusting the process of acting, which is one half of the film, but it's also trusting the legal process and judiciary process, which has not worked in these men's favor at all. So forcing them to trust that process in hopes of regaining their freedom one day is devastating, while also trusting the acting process and having that one avenue to feel comfortable and be yourself in this prison complex where, you know, men aren't really allowed to do those things and feel those ways. And maybe if they were allowed to feel those ways and do those things as young men, they wouldn't be in prison. Let's get into all of that, okay? Divine G, imprisoned at Sing Sing for a crime he didn't commit, finds purpose by acting in a theater group alongside other incarcerated men in this story of resilience, humanity, and transformative power of art. So we follow Divine G, played by Coleman Domingo, who is the greatest actor I've seen on my screen in everything. Everything I've ever seen him in is just, he goes 100%. 10 minutes in, I was in tears because seeing a group of men find comfort and happiness in acting and the element of play moved me deeply. In the wake of the male loneliness epidemic and seeing all of this like hatred spewed online of men having to be masculine and dominating and, you know, the breadwinners and all this stuff. Though it is the patriarchy and systems that set that up, there is a deep piece of me that feels really bad for young men and young boys growing up with that environment online and feeling like they have to mold themselves into being these like masculine, power-hungry men to be accepted by other men. I feel like it's encouraged, where I feel like most men don't have that accessibility to acceptance, and that's why we hear so many stories of like young men who are still in the closet because they're not able to live as freely emotionally and mentally as women are. That being said, on the flip side, men are free to do most things they want that women are not. So we have these double-edged swords, but seeing that did make me very upset, especially because the way they speak about acting and are so vulnerable with one another, and they're just putting on a show. They're so passionate about that one thing because this is the one place where they're free. Because after rehearsal, they have to go back to living in a cell, in a prison. And some of them are going to spend the rest of their lives there, and some of them have the opportunity to get out. But the point is that itself is a life sentence. So you have this life sentence of being in prison or a life sentence of death, and the only freedom you have in that is this small acting class with a bunch of other men, incarcerated men. So I just immediately started crying. Then one of the plot points in the film is that they're trying to come up with whatever their next show is going to be, and they talk about how, you know, everything is dramatic. You know, we're in prison, everything we deal with every day is dramatic. Like, let's do something light, like a comedy. And Coleman Domingo has this line where he says, dying is easy, comedy is hard. Because it is. Divine G, played by Coleman Domingo, he is coming up on a hearing to talk about his case and potentially getting out of prison because he's innocent, and there's a recording that proves his innocence. So he's rehearsing with his friend Mike, and they're talking about like all the scenarios that could happen and basically just the questions that he would get in that hearing. And the shot is so confined and tight, like the walls are framing them in this tiny space in this little room. And all of the scenes where they're in their cells, when they're out even on in the yard, when they're in the common rooms, areas, everything, it all feels so confined and tight, like it's closing in on you. And then when we get to these scenes where they're rehearsing and acting, it's open and it's like, oh, I can breathe. Because for the characters themselves, this is the only place where they're able to feel free and breathe and, you know, feel vulnerable and not have to put up this face and walk out into the yard and, you know, follow all of these cultural and whatever rules of the prison. And I wrote, it almost symbolizes that the only true place to feel freedom is within the walls of the acting class, in the walls of the prison. Another great character that we meet is Divine E, who they recruit to come and join them in their acting class because they had a few open spots. And they're all auditioning for the show, which is basically just like time traveling through all of history so they can put in gladiators and Hamlet and all of these funny things into a story. And Divine G and Divine E audition for Hamlet, and Divine E gets it. And we see Coleman Domingo's a little upset about that because you can tell that he is kind of the star of the acting group. And so him not getting Hamlet was kind of devastating for him, but he overcomes that in the story. And when he delivers the to be or not to be monologue, I thought it was so incredible. I, of course, started crying. Yeah. So that was beautiful as well. And then after the stunning monologue, okay, now I'm gonna cry. There is a beautiful scene that cuts between Mike's cell and Divine G's cell. They're going back and forth and they're having a conversation about family and about life and all of these beautiful things. And in the next scene, Mike dies. Mike dies of a brain aneurysm. And all of the men are sitting in a circle talking about him, and they say something about like, oh, a stabbing, like I get that, but a brain aneurysm. And what broke my heart about that is that these men in this prison have become so accustomed to people dying, like beaten to death, being stabbed, like wrongfully killed in prison. And they never have that chance of like getting out and being free. That a brain aneurysm, they were like, a brain aneurysm? Like what? And so you have that beautiful scene and then he dies. And so I literally had to pause and take a break because I'm a very emotional, dramatic person as it is. But this was just really sad and hard to watch because you have all these men in this prison system where a lot of them, yeah, it's probably not their fault that they're in there because of systemic racism and the prison industrial complex and all of these factors that go into why so many young Black men are put into prison. And so to see Mike talk so much about his family and wanting to go back to the island and he's never going to get to do that. I was an emotional wreck and I'm going to need like a minute to cry and then I'll come back because I don't want to be sobbing. Okay, I took a breather there. I'm going to read my last bit of what I wrote for the film as a whole, then I'll give you my review. But the line being trust the process as we follow Divine G in his acting troupe, following the process of like, this is where I get to shed all of those layers and be somebody else and feel vulnerable and just feel free in a prison where you don't get those privileges. Trusting that process and then also having to like put his faith into the same legal process that put him in jail and failed him the first time. It was just really upsetting to watch because, yeah, it's a movie, but this is the reality of so many Americans and so many families and so many kids whose parents are in prison for something they didn't commit. And it just really broke my heart that it was like, okay, I'm going to watch this movie and then I'm going to move on. But there's all these people in prison who don't have that justice. And so for his character to have to follow and trust the same legal process to get out of jail for something he didn't commit that put him in jail for something he didn't commit, I just thought that was a beautiful way of depicting this. The last scene, spoiler, Divine G and Divine E both are out of prison and they're driving in this truck, and he unrolls the window and he just like feels the fresh air on his face, and he's like, the air feels different out here. And Divine E is like, it is different out here. I just really thought it was a gorgeous, beautiful film, and I don't feel like I saw a lot of people talking about it during Oscar season. And after seeing that, I cannot believe that that didn't win more awards. Not only for the camaraderie on set and like all of the stuff I've read about it, about people being paid the same amount and having actual incarcerated people in the film. I just think it's so beautiful. But having trust the process as that logline, I don't think there is a phrase that could describe the film and the emotions that it evokes in a better way. And Coleman Domingo is the perfect man to have played this. And if I had my own Oscars, he would have gotten it. Easy, easy, easy. Like, as much as I was rooting for Timothée Chalamet, I do understand, but it's just really heartbreaking to me that, like, yeah, people, we will watch this movie and then we will move on, and those people will not get their justice unless something changes, and it's getting harder and harder for those changes to happen in the current climate of the United States of America. Coleman Domingo gives all of himself in this role. Every bit of emotion is felt through the screen. The scenes where he's being interviewed by the board made me want to sob. This poor man is doing everything he can to rehabilitate himself and others through his actions and community he's established, and due to the unjust system he is in prison for a crime he didn't commit. This is the reality of the prison systems here, and it only is getting worse. The film does so much in regards to performance, but also educating and depicting the true nature of the prison industrial complex. I haven't seen The Brutalist, but I can imagine it. You know? And that's not to say, like, one struggle is more important than another person's struggle, but I think when one person struggles, we all struggle. And so to continue to have these issues of, you know, people wrongfully being imprisoned and not having the option to rehabilitate yourself or anything besides, you know, that life sentence of prison, I do think that is a problem. And I'm still processing it, and I will have more thoughts on it for the future. But I really, if you watch any movie from this list, I'm telling you right now, it has to be Sing Sing. You don't get a choice. We're going to move on to the last and final movie I watched this week, which was Titane, directed by Julia Ducournau. I've seen this movie so many times because every time I watch it, I'm like, what the fuck? But I recently, Friday, wrote a blog about my favorite films to have won the Palme d'Or. I don't know how to say that. The Palme d'Or. The Palme d'Or. From the Cannes Film Festival, because I'm not there. I didn't get to go. I got rejected from the program, and that's totally fine. But I really wanted to go. That being said, I've seen Titane so many times, and I did watch it pretty passively. Like, I was watching it while I was doing other work, but I just find it to be so interesting. And I'm going to briefly run through this because we're already going so long. And I've written about it before, so you can go find that on my blog. Titane follows this girl who is in a car accident when she's younger, and she gets a titanium plate put in her head. Then we fast forward to her being an exotic car dancer, where she, like, is a stripper, but instead of poles, it's, like, tricked out cars and shit. And then this guy comes up to her car and is being weird with her, so she murders him, and then she goes and has sex with the car and gets impregnated by the car and goes on this, like, murderous rampage, and then pretends to be the missing son of a man who's been looking for his son for years. And I literally cannot give you a review or, like, thoughts on it. You just have to watch it for yourself. Like, I'll read you the logline and the synopsis, and then I'm kind of just going to leave it there, because due to the absurdity and the body horror, it's just something you have to see for your own eyes. I mean, like, the final scene is something I think about all the time. And I don't think I'll ever, like, recover from that. So it has 5 stars. Also, Raw is one of my favorite body horrors ever. Also directed by Julia Ducournau. So I would say watch Raw first and then jump into the deep end with Titane. A woman with a metal plate in her head from a childhood car accident embarks on a bizarre journey, bringing her into contact with a firefighter who's reunited with his missing son after 10 years. Words could not even begin to describe what is visually depicted on that screen, though. So that's for you. I'm done talking for today. Like, I don't want to talk anymore. So those are the movies I watched this week. I'm also binge watching Overcompensating. I'm going to put that right back on. Finished Adults. Loved it. I didn't write a blog for this Monday. Sorry. But you can catch up on old ones, and you can catch up on old movies I watched this week, if that tickles your fancy. I hope this gave you something. And if you have movie recommendations, please give them to me. I'd love some movie recommendations, because all movies are worth watching. It's just like a matter of taste, which ones you like and you don't. So that being said, thank you so much for watching. Till next time, stay flirty, stay thirsty, and stay watching movies. Watch more movies together, make more movies together. And I'll see you soon. Till next time, chin chin. And yeah.